accepted that Charlie Kirk is not coming back. And somehow it took me longer to get there. It took me longer to accept that fact than it did many others. Some people accepted it within just a matter of days. His quote unquote closest friends, his closest political allies, the White House, they all seemed kind of ready to move on so much faster than I was. And now it's looking like some people even may have accepted Charlie's death within minutes. There is a video that is currently circulating of his chief of staff, Mikey McCoy. It's going viral for a lot of reasons. We're going to go through that video and buckle up because I have an even more exclusive, never before seen video that I think is going to make your skin crawl. Plus, I have even more never before seen text messages from Charlie Kirk. Incredibly, Charlie Kirk did in fact know that turning point was going to be the death of him, and I have proof of that. He also knew that I was the only person who was going to step up to defend him after he was gone. That sounds crazy. Except Mikey did not have blood anywhere near him because Mikey was behind the tent when Charlie got shot. And Mikey, in less than a second, does something that I find to be quite strange. He puts his phone to his ear and he begins a conversation. So we're going to watch that clip in its entirety. Mark is going to bring it in. So we decided to slow this clip down, and we're going to watch this clip slow down so you can see that it is exactly 834 milliseconds from the time that you hear the shot. That is how long it takes for Mikey McCoy to put the phone to his ear. Now, why is that precise timing so important? Because there's no dialing. Mikey didn't have time to dial, okay? You can't dial and put your phone to an ear in 0.834 seconds. The next time that you're going to see Mikey McCoy, as we just showed you, is in just under 2.5 seconds on the other side of the tent. He's on a phone call. So we can track Mikey, but let's watch the clip again in milliseconds so you really grasp how quickly this transpires. So when this clip was brought, there we go, we're tracking that. Yeah, when the clip was brought to my attention, I obviously have a file, a big folder of files of every angle, and I decided to track Mikey from every angle available to see, like, maybe we just missed it, and he did at some point put that phone down, dial a number, speed dial, hold down one, I don't know. Maybe we missed it, because that seems automatic, right? 0.834, that seems pretty quick. And no, he doesn't do that. We even have him in front of Charlie's car. When Charlie is brought to the car, the waiting car rather, he is still on the phone. And I can show you the clip of that. Take a look at this. Don't worry, we'll slow it down for you. See him in the background with the backpack. It's Mikey McCoy. Okay. So what are we to make of that? The only logical conclusion that I can come up with, and many others, because I've pressed, I said, play devil's advocate. I want you to advocate for Mikey McCoy. I want you to play lawyer, and you are representing your client, Mikey McCoy. What was he do? How did he do it this quickly? No one could win this game. The only logical conclusion that we come up with was that Mikey was already on a phone call at 12:23 p.m. By 12:23 p.m., he was already on a phone call. So I said, let's go back a little earlier in the footage and see if we can find when he actually maybe dials onto the phone. Maybe we can see him pick up the phone and begin a call before the shot takes off. And then after beginning that call, if we're following this logic, that would mean he puts his phone down until Charlie gets shot. And we were able to find what we think could be that moment. And I can tell you that it is 1 minute and 45 seconds approximately before that shot goes off, and we can watch that here. You see Mikey's on his phone here, and you're going to see he pulls it up, and he starts to cover his ear again. Now, that could be unrelated. Again, we're taking a guess here. That's what made the most sense to us because we couldn't justify it in any other way. And I want to be clear, we're not here to make assumptions, okay? And we wouldn't have to make any assumptions if Turning Point USA could just tell the truth. They could just be open and they could be honest about everything. Okay, I obviously went out to both Mikey McCoy and Andrew Colvett for a statement, asked those two questions. Hey, who were you on the phone with? What's going on here? No response. Weird.
As debates raged, Candace Owens and Ice Cube's claims began to merge in the public consciousness. It was no longer just about one suspicious death. It was about an entire structure of influence, money, ideology, and hidden allegiances that might have collided in the hours before tragedy struck. Owens' initial video had been a match thrown into dry brush, but this new revelation was gasoline poured on open flame. The narrative shifted again, mutating into something even darker, a collision of geopolitics and betrayal. It was at this volatile moment that a new name entered the public discussion, one buried deep within the leaked Turning Point messages Owens had shared. It was a name that most people outside certain political and religious circles had never heard before, but whose significance was immediately apparent to anyone who understood the machinery of influence behind American politics. The messages referenced a mysterious figure, unnamed in the initial leaks, but later identified through collaborative online investigation as Rabbi Pasak-Walitsky, a powerful lobbyist and strategist with well-established connections to major pro-Israel advocacy groups and wealthy political donors. The revelation detonated across the digital space like another bomb. Commentators on every platform began speculating about the rabbi's role in the internal conflict that had apparently consumed Turning Point USA in the weeks leading to Kirk's death. His communications, buried in the leaked chat transcripts, appeared to intersect with those of both Kirk and Hammer. The tone of those exchanges, as reconstructed by digital investigators, suggested tension, negotiations, persuasion, subtle pressure. Why, many asked, was a figure with such strong lobbying ties embedded in what should have been a purely internal political debate? For many followers of the developing story, the pattern seemed unmistakable. This was not simply an ideological dispute, but a struggle over financial leverage and influence. If Kirk had indeed decided to distance his organization from the expectations of major political donors tied to international interests, that decision could have been catastrophic for those whose livelihoods depended on the maintenance of those relationships. The picture forming in the minds of investigators and ordinary viewers alike was one of enormous pressure building behind closed doors, of a man preparing to make a stand that would shake the foundations of the movement he had built. According to the theory that was taking shape online, the final 24 hours of Charlie Kirk's life represented the culmination of that mounting tension. He had, the story suggested, chosen to take a public position that would distance him from the very interests that had funded his rise. His shift in tone, his newly cautious remarks about foreign policy, and his emphasis on independent American interests had, in this view, sealed his fate. Owens' audience, already primed to believe that power often cloaks its operations in silence, began piecing together the timeline. Kirk's change of message, his visible anxiety in his last interviews, the leaked arguments with advisors, the unexplained adjustments to his schedule, all converging into what appeared, to many, as a deliberate pattern. The whispers grew louder. Whistleblowers who claimed to have been part of the event planning committee began contacting independent journalists. Their accounts, shared anonymously and verified through overlapping details, painted an unsettling picture. They described emails that had been deleted without explanation, security instructions that were abruptly altered, and a peculiar rescheduling that placed Kirk in a smaller, less secure venue than originally planned. One testimony alleged that a member of Kirk's personal security team had been reassigned at the last moment, replaced by unfamiliar personnel brought in through an external contract. No official reason was ever provided. Each of these fragments, on its own, might have meant nothing. Together, they formed something chilling. To Owens and her growing following, they were the fingerprints of orchestration. Someone moved pieces on a board, she told her audience in one of her subsequent broadcasts. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. By now, the story had transcended tragedy and entered myth. Every new detail transformed the collective imagination into an active investigation, every whisper amplified through countless online discussions, podcasts, and live streams. The narrative of a man betrayed by his own circle, silenced by a network of intertwined political and financial interests, became an obsession. Kirk's name, once synonymous with youthful conservatism, now carried the weight of martyrdom. Ice Cube, too, continued to add his own voice, weaving the growing web of suspicions into a global context. He claimed to have spoken to contacts familiar with intelligence networks, who allegedly confirmed that Kirk's final shift in rhetoric had caused ripples in certain political circles abroad. Though he provided no hard evidence, his words resonated with millions who already distrusted the official machinery of information. To them, this wasn't speculation. It was confirmation of what they had long suspected, that the most dangerous thing in modern politics isn't opposition, but defiance. The pressure mounted on every front. Journalists attempted to obtain the official autopsy results, but access was restricted, explanations vague. The official narrative, a sudden medical emergency, began to sound less like an answer and more like a deflection. Anonymous accounts claiming to have seen portions of the medical file described inconsistencies, injuries that didn't align with the stated cause of death, and an unusual level of classification surrounding the case. None of it was verifiable, but by that point, verification was secondary. Perception had already hardened into belief. The theory now had all its necessary elements: motive, method, and opportunity. A man makes a moral stand against influential financial backers. An internal dispute escalates. Communications reveal hostility and veiled threats. His protection mysteriously falters at a critical moment. His death is sanitized by an ambiguous label, and those closest to him demand answers that authorities seem unwilling to provide. It was the anatomy of a political tragedy dissected in real time by millions of spectators. For some, it was undeniable proof of corruption and suppression. For others, it was the tragic culmination of coincidence, the human tendency to connect dots that do not belong together. But in an era when truth and narrative compete on equal footing, the distinction hardly mattered. The damage was done. By late evening, the phrase "comfortable lie," the one Owens had used to describe the official story, was trending globally. It became a slogan for a movement that now saw itself not as an audience to tragedy, but as participants in a struggle for revelation. "Justice for Charlie" appeared on banners, shirts, and profile pictures. The more critics attempted to discredit Owens and Ice Cube, the stronger their followers' conviction became. Attempts at rational debunking only fueled the sense that there was a coordinated effort to bury the truth. And yet, the deeper one looked, the murkier everything became. None of the leaked communications were formally authenticated. The supposed medical experts remained unnamed. Even the whistleblowers provided no documentation that could withstand legal scrutiny. But the absence of proof, paradoxically, made the story stronger in the realm of belief. If it were false, one supporter argued on a viral live stream, they'd have proven it wrong already. As the weeks passed, the investigation seemed to stall publicly, but behind the scenes, the story evolved into a cultural mirror, reflecting the public's fractured relationship with institutions, authority, and information itself. Every unanswered question became evidence of conspiracy, every silence an admission. For Candace Owens, this was no longer a story about one man's death. It had become a mission. Her broadcasts grew longer, more personal, her tone mixing sorrow with defiance. She spoke about legacy, integrity, and the cost of telling uncomfortable truths. She accused powerful media conglomerates of participating in what she called the burial of reality. Her language grew almost prophetic, part journalism, part warning. "When truth becomes dangerous," she said in one viral segment, "that's when it matters most." At the same time, the figure of Rabbi Pasak Walitsky continued to dominate discussion threads. Some claimed he had gone into seclusion. Others said he was cooperating quietly with investigators. Nothing was confirmed. Everything was possible. The mystery surrounding him became emblematic of the entire saga, a symbol of the connections between ideology, money, and influence that seemed to operate above public accountability. The story's momentum showed no sign of fading. It was no longer confined to political circles. It had become a mainstream fixation, discussed on late-night panels and talk shows, speculated upon by pundits, dismissed by officials, and immortalized by digital creators. The line between fact and fiction blurred irretrievably, and what remained was a haunting collective question. If power truly wanted to erase a truth, how would the public ever know? Even now, months after the event, the air around Charlie Kirk's final day remains thick with questions that refuse to die. What exactly happened in those final hours? Why were there sudden changes to his schedule and security? Who made those calls? What was the real nature of the internal disputes that had consumed Turning Point USA in the days prior? And why does every attempt at closure seem to lead only to deeper confusion? Candace Owens' crusade continues, her audience growing, her message unwavering. She insists the truth will surface, no matter how many barriers are erected to obscure it. Ice Cube echoes the sentiment, his rhetoric sharper, more defiant. Together, they've created not merely a movement, but a narrative ecosystem, one where disbelief in authority has become its own form of faith. For the millions watching from afar, the story of Charlie Kirk's death has transcended journalism. It has become a modern myth, a cautionary tale about ambition, loyalty, and the unseen mechanisms that shape political destiny. Whether it was truly an assassination or a convergence of tragedy and paranoia, one truth remains uncontested. The event has forever altered the landscape of political trust. The silence of institutions, the persistence of speculation, and the raw hunger for answers have fused into something permanent, a cultural scar. And so, the search continues, suspended between fact and faith, reason and fear. The world waits, still asking, still doubting, still wondering whether the line between accident and orchestration was crossed that day. In the end, perhaps the most terrifying truth is not what happened to Charlie Kirk, but how easily belief itself became the battlefield on which his legacy now lives or dies.